Good morning and welcome to Skinny for Friday, August 7th. I'm Mitch Perry, the senior political reporter for the Florida Phoenix, joined by my colleague, Ray Roa, editor-in-chief of Creative Loafing. Hey, Ray.
I'm here, miraculously.
Yes, coming in 30 seconds before airtime, just like last week.
No, man.
All right.
Summer's almost over, guys.
Well, I'm glad it's August because I'm not a fan of summer in Florida's period, so we're closer to September, football season. Hey, so, we've got a really great show for you today. We had a really, of course, in the news nationally, politically this week was this big watershed moment some are describing for the progressive movement with the election of Dr. Abdul Al-Sayed in the Michigan Democratic Senate primary. And the thing that made that more unique, other than the fact that if Al-Sayed is elected in November, he'll be the first Muslim senator in the U.S. Senate ever, is that unlike Zohran Mamdani winning over Andrew Cuomo in New York or these congressional primaries in Manhattan and Philadelphia, Denver, which is taking place this summer, this was in one of the big battleground states in the Midwest here, and it's a really big deal. And we've got this, this intense pressure going on amongst the Democratic establishment and progressive and DSA candidates about whether they can win the swing districts in November. Later in the show, we're going to have a couple members of DSA. One of them actually is involved with a national organization in the studio here. But first, one of the most interesting races on the August 18th ballot here in parts of the Tampa Bay area is the State Senate District 16 race between two Florida House Democrats from the Tampa Bay area. That's Fentress Driscoll and Michele Rayner. We had Rep. Driscoll in the studio on the Skinny 2 weeks ago, and today we hear from her opponent in the race, State Representative Michele Rayner. Michele Rayner, welcome back to the Skinny.
It is so good to be here. It's like home, so coming to WMNF. So thank you so much for having me, y'all.
It's great to have you here. And first question we'll ask you, so we asked Fentress Driscoll 2 weeks ago, for voters who, like myself actually, I'm a voter in this district, why should voters choose you over Fentress Driscoll in this race?
Listen, I think the choice is clear, and I think our record is very clear. Before I ever got elected, I feel like I've, especially with Ray, may have done some work as far as just advocacy in the community. I'm a civil rights lawyer by trade. I've stood up for our community. I am one of the very few lawyers, along with Benjamin Crump, that took on the Stand Your Ground law and won. And so the work and the body of work that I've done has been very, very clear from day one. So I don't shy away from hard fights. Not only do I not shy away from hard fights, but I get things done. And I think right now we're in a moment, and you kind of alluded to what happened in Michigan. People are tired of Democrats that are just the same, and everyone's like, well, it's a primary. It doesn't really matter. It actually does matter, because what we're seeing now, that people are tired of folks that don't actually represent their values. And so I think that, for the last 6 years, I have worked incredibly hard to make sure that I represented the values, not only of the people of the district, but also the people of the state of Florida as well.
Can I follow up on that, Rep. Rayner? Obviously, people will try to say, just a primary, it doesn't matter, things like that. But in this particular race, you have two people who, inarguably, a lot of voters like, right? Both of you. I asked Fentress about this, what's it like to run against, but you said we need somebody who's not going to back away from a hard fight. Can you specifically say an instance where maybe Driscoll didn't live up to that? And I really want to help people draw a distinction here, because they like both of you.
Yeah, what happened recently, we had a vote on data centers, right? And I voted no. Representative Driscoll voted yes. And invariably, there was a data center funded mail piece that came out against me, calling me a MAGA Republican. I can think about the budget. I voted against the budget, and I had money in the budget and was able to still get that money veto proof, but that budget didn't reflect the values of the people. And so what I have been able to do, along with other colleagues, such as Angie Nixon and a Representative Gant, we have put forth a people's budget. We have put forth a people's agenda. We have put forth a people's affordability package, making sure that what is reflected in those ideas and those policies are reflective of the people. And so for me, I think the distinction is very clear. You don't have to make appointments to come find me. You can find me in Publix. You can find me in Aldi's. You can find me at, my favorite, RIP to the Crowbar. But you can find me at my favorite spots. I think for me, being in this district, having represented a majority minority district, it's about accessibility. And so for me, I think what makes me different is that you can be principled and effective. You don't have to be you don't have to play the game. And I think that, my Republican colleagues on the other side, while I've been able to get things done, they know very clear that I'm very principled about how I handle things. And so there is a distinction. You can look at my finance report, Ray. You can see the difference in who gets what and who funds who. And I think right now people are tired of having to try to figure out if their politicians are going to be bought and sold.
And again, you're just tuning in. We're speaking with Rep. Michele Rayner from the Tampa Bay area, talking this big state Senate District 16 race, which, by the way, it's a primary, but it's actually the general, because there's only two people in this race. And so winner of this race on August 18th is the winner and will be going to Tallahassee next year as a state senator. Okay, you mentioned this mail piece. We got to talk about that. You've both.
I missed that one.
You proclaimed yourself Ron DeSantis' biggest nightmare.
Well, there was an article. Now, I didn't proclaim it. There was an article about 5 years ago that said it. Okay.
So let's be fair here. So, but this mailer came out of the weekend. I'm in the district. I did not get it, but I saw on social media that said Michele Rayner, a real Republican, and it said three things about it. It said, and it listed why they would say that. One was donors who gave over $1 million to Trump and MAGA Republicans have given to your campaign. It also said you voted with the NRA to protect gun makers from being held accountable when their weapons cause deaths and injuries. And three, refused to vote for Barack Obama. So I don't know where you want to begin with this.
I worked for Barack Obama, so that's actually crazy. So
how do they know that? I mean, it's a secret ballot in America. I don't even know how you do that.
Right. So I worked for Hillary Clinton in the primary, worked for Barack Obama in the general. So maybe that's what they're talking about. As far as the gun liability,
is that the 6 hour bill?
Yeah, the 6 hour bill. I voted it down.
You voted. You're right. Now let me ask you about that, and just to tell our listeners, because that was a really interesting development during the session.
Go ahead, Mitch. Get nerdy on us.
Yeah. So
that's what Mitch does.
6 hour. This gun manufacturer, they have been the subject of numerous lawsuits around the country alleging that its P320 pistols can fire without an intentional trigger pull. And I will say that among the police departments who stopped using that was the Tampa Police Department. Correct. So they came in giving out big checks to a lot of Republicans, basically.
I didn't get a check. I'm not a real Republican.
And this bill all of a sudden starts moving that would give them some immunity here. Are they saying, was there any, I think there was 2 committee votes.
Yeah.
Did you vote for it in the committee?
So in the committee, I did vote for it, but I knew it was dead in the Senate. So I knew that there was going to be no movement. And the reason that I voted for it is because there was and without getting super wonky, there was a provision that was changed, and I gave the bill sponsor my word. So I said, okay, we'll get it to the floor. It's going to die. Right. I knew it was going to die. It was not moving in the Senate. And then what's the other thing? Trump money.
Trump money.
I think that I got in 2021 a check from Amscott. That's about it.
Okay.
Other than that, I haven't done anything else. I think if you look at my opponent's record, she has FP&L, she has Duke Energy, she has Disney, she has Publix. So I think it's rich that data centers who funded this.
The group was called People for Honor Project is the group that was on the mailer. And as we've learned, they have received funding from Fort Meade LLC. Correct. Which is the group trying to put a data center in Fort Meade. And so what this happened, Michele Rayner, as we saw discussed on social media, was, this is tied to maybe that AI bill, right? And you mentioned that. So that bill that passed, let's tell the legislature, our listeners about that, which is that it regulates large-scale data centers. It requires local water management districts to deny permits to data centers if the proclaimed use of the water is harmful to the water resources of the area. It also mandates that the centers use reclaimed water when possible, and that any data center bears its own full cost of service without subsidy by the public. But it does not include a ban on government employees signing non-disclosure agreements with data center developers. Tell us why you opposed it at the end of the day.
So, I want to make this very clear. This is not, me pointing fingers. This is really coming back to the issue that we have seen in primary politics, not only here in Tampa Bay, but also in Tallahassee and throughout the state, and Democratic primary politics, that you see dark money getting involved in these primary races. And it's interesting that this particular data center gave more to this particular PAC than they gave to Byron Donalds. So you are more afraid of me coming into the legislature than Byron, and then you love Byron Donalds. So that's number one. But number two, I think that we have to understand that while this, everyone's like, well, this data center bill wasn't that harmful. Actually, it was, because once again, there is no moratorium on the fact of how they're going to get the land. We know that data centers like to use taxpayers' money. We know that they like to use eminent domain. We know that it is noise pollution. We know that it is water pollution. We know that it does not bring a quality of life to the residents. And we know who's going to be most impacted. Where is land the cheapest? Land is the cheapest in Senate District 16, which is a working class district, which is a district full of Black and brown folks and working families. And so for me, when I vote, I do, while I take in consideration the state of Florida, I take in consideration the people I'm directly connected to. I know that if they could go ahead and do eminent domain down the street from here and say, well, this land is cheap and let's figure out how to do this, that, Miss Jackson that's lived in her house for 50 years is going to have to find a place to live. I'm sorry if I can't get with it. I'm sorry if that your watered down bill doesn't do the job to make sure our people are safe and have what they need. And at the end of the day, we have lived under administration for 8 years that have been dishonest brokers. And so I'm sorry that I'm not going to carry their water for them, not only in the House and in the Senate. The people of District 16 deserve a lot better than that.
I'm fascinated by the data center thing, and I'm also fascinated by this quantum computing complex in South Chicago, where the steel mills were.
Yeah.
And I talked to a lot of people who are for data centers, and they're like, well, if we don't, you hear the argument, if we don't build them, we're going to be so behind. Is there a world where somebody can build a data center and actually not commit the sins of continuing to degrade Black and brown communities, marginalized people? Is there a world where that exists yet in anybody's brain?
I think there's a world, it does not exist. I think that a world exists where you have to be good corporate partners with the community. You have to make sure that you're willing to have transparency. You have to make sure that you're willing to be regulated. And what we have seen from these data centers is that they don't want to be regulated. And unfortunately, that's why they don't want me in the legislature, because I'm saying, wait, before we do all of this, let's do a moratorium. We even saw, I think yesterday, Hillsborough County Commission was like, we're going to put a ban on this for a year until we figure out what's going on. And I always say this, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Jeff Brandes, he says one thing, I know, right? Like, he says that, the legislature always loves to do studies. We love to do a study. We love to do an OPAGA study. We love, so why can't we, when it's coming to data centers, think about doing a study where you have people with no skin in the game, but people who have an understanding of what's going on, and actually see how this will impact the state of Florida. There are arguments that I've heard, especially if this property tax initiative goes through, that data centers would be a economic driver in some of these fiscally constrained counties. I agree. However, how is that data center going to affect the quality of life and ultimately the health of folks in those fiscally constrained counties?
If you're just tuning in right now, it's 19 minutes past the hour. You're listening to Skinny here on WMNF 88.5 FM. I'm Mitch Perry with Ray Rowe. We're speaking with State Representative Michele Rayner from the Tampa Bay area, running against Ventures Driscoll in the State Senate District 16 race coming up on August 18th. Although, of course, voting by mail is going on right now. Early voting already began in Hillsborough, begins in Pinellas this weekend. Okay, one of your big bills, I believe, that you are proud of, that you passed in your tenure in Tallahassee, was the social media bill.
Correct.
Yes.
Did you see what happened today? You saw what the judge ordered for Meta to pay.
Oh, in New Mexico?
Yeah.
$500 million plus.
Correct. I'm correct, Mitch. I may be early, but I'm not wrong.
No, you're not. And you worked with conservative Tyler Sirwall on this. In fact, I was at the presser when you, I don't know if it had been passed or with Paul Renner was there. You were there next to him. But let's talk about this, because what the bill does, and then also you being involved with that, because I think, absolutely one of the more liberal members of the legislature working with some of those conservative people on this legislation was very interesting.
Yeah, no. So here's the thing. It goes back to that comment I said earlier at the top of the show about being principled but effective. I mean, there are things that, my Republican colleagues do not ever ask me about. Like, we're not going to be able to have a conversation. But I think that what we had been seeing is a lot of harm coming to children on the internet, whether it's through bullying, whether it's through AI, whether it's through the chat bots, all of those things. And what we really focused on, and the idea that I had, and of course, Speaker Rayner at the time actually took my bill and morphed it into this big bill, is that we're not focusing on the speech, but we're focusing on the addictive design of the social media products. We're focusing on the business model of the product. And so, I took heat from, a lot of people. And so that lets me know maybe I was doing something right. I took heat from Republicans. I took heat from Democrats. But for me, what I have been seeing, and also, y'all know I am a criminal defense attorney. So even in the work that I do as a criminal defense attorney, I was seeing the effects of social media on our children as far as them being prone to danger, making bad decisions, those kinds of things. And then if you have parents that don't really understand the mechanism, you can say, I can limit your kids, my kids' time on social media, but you can't control a business model. You can't control addictive design. You cannot control the things that are outside of your purview. And so for us, it was really about accountability and making sure if you're going to do business here, that you are going to be accountable. And that's why I said earlier, I may be early, but I'm not wrong. And we saw that the court said, hey, listen, you're going to have to pay New Mexico, over $500 million in order to deal with this issue.
And we've seen other states pick up on this, and even countries, right?
Correct,
Australia,
correct.
I think, is
Australia, New Zealand,
Yeah.
I think Spain. And so I think because what we're seeing is that there are grown people who don't know how to use the internet properly.
We see that every day.
Yeah. I look at Facebook and I'm like, the worst thing sometimes they could have ever given us is social media, and the best thing. But we have adults that don't have emotional maturity to use the internet. And so now we are asking our children to be subjected to, a bad business model that was created for folks to be addicted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say something about, I'm sure you did get some heat from some of your Democratic friends, but I will just say this: the person you're either you are Rep. Driscoll or hoping to succeed, Darrell Roussan, famously worked with Republicans throughout his tenure. He got heat from some people too. He also brought home a lot of bacon to the district, and that's just the way it works in Tallahassee.
Yeah, Mitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I want to talk about let's talk about actually criminal justice issues, because I know this is something, as you just said, you're a criminal defense attorney here. It does get talked a lot about in this campaign and overall, but I know you care about it. I've been writing a lot about the death penalty because we just saw we've had so many executions done here in the state of Florida. What do you think of the fact? And I know you've been part of this or voted against this legislation, but we've seen it's a lot easier to change the laws about how many jurors can vote to put somebody on death row. There's a law challenging the fact that usually capital punishment only applies to murder that has happened in the last few years. Tell us your thoughts about what's gone on in terms of criminal justice issues in Tallahassee.
I'm super concerned, and I actually just got out of trying a capital case in the middle of a campaign, right? And I'm concerned because it is less about justice and more about pushing a narrative of one party being law and order versus another party not being law and order. We have the Constitution for a reason. It has been concerning when I was even the ranking member on criminal justice that I had members who were colleagues who were members of the Florida Bar indicate, well, it doesn't really matter what the court says. We're going to do this and then we can challenge it. And so there is a whole body of law that we've held to for hundreds of years. And that law has to be tempered with humanity. And I think my issue is that my Republican colleagues, and we understand that they are in the supermajority, right? So they can do whatever they want. And so the only thing that I really have is my voice. And a lot of the things that I've shared in committee and on the House floor have been quoted in lawsuits. I think for me, I am concerned that we are not balancing the idea of punishment and rehabilitation. We're not balancing the idea of someone's worst mistake is they're not the sum of their worst mistake. And what I understand is that there's a need for law. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that if we're going to take someone's life, it ought to be unanimous, right? If we're going to take
like it is in 48 other states.
Correct. If we're going to take someone's life, it ought to be for the ultimate crime. And I'm not saying that, harming children isn't the ultimate crime, but there has been, buckets of case law on this. And so by folks who are way smarter than me. And I think that if we're going to do that, we ought to be very mindful and very careful about that.
Again, we just have about 5 more minutes left here with Rep. Michele Rayner.
No,
we got time though here.
Goes.
I know. Okay, so let me ask you about, let's talk about endorsements in this race. I noticed that a couple weeks ago, you released a list of 2/3, actually, of the current members of the Democratic House Caucus have come out in support of you. Now, we did ask Rep. Driscoll about this, of course, when she was here. She said a lot of members wound up endorsing her before she got in the race. So a lot of those endorsements are very old. Once I filed, some of those members co-endorsed me, and I happen to know some of those members actually maybe did not endorse my opponent. Maybe she might be overstating some of those. Those are the exact quotes of Rep. Driscoll.
Oh, this is par for the course for her. That's actually not true. So there's a reason that 2/3 of the caucus she led endorsed me. Even when there was an idea that she may be getting in, there's a reason that there's not one black woman in the House or in the Senate caucus that is endorsing her. There's a reason.
Well, can you tell us what that reason is?
Just for the same reason that you just stated. It's the lack of being able to work with folks. It's the lack of being able to be principled, and it's the lack under her leadership. We got into a super minority, the smallest number of Democrats that we've had in a very long time, probably in at least 10 to 15 years.
I'm sorry, I will say that I don't know, in terms of co-endorsements, I did reach out to a couple of people, and let's see, Mike Gottlieb said he did co-endorse.
He did.
I don't know if there's any others that you know for sure.
I think Mike Gottlieb is the only one that I can think of, and that was because he was in her leadership team. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, Rep. Driscoll should be more concerned about the type of leadership she's provided or the lack thereof than worrying about who has endorsement, who has not. She should run her race as I'm going to run mine, and make sure that it's people focused and make sure that we're talking about folks. At the end of the day, the endorsement that matters the most, and I'm so grateful for my colleagues, being the endorsement that matters the most is at the ballot box. And that is who I'm making this case to. I'm making the case to my neighbors. I'm making the case to the people that I actually live around. I didn't have to move here to vote for myself. I'm making the case to the people I've represented for 6 years. And so at the end of the day, we can go back and forth with these little jabs of, oh, you didn't do this. I'm not doing that, because at the end of the day, people are still wondering how they're going to be able to afford their rent. They're wondering how they're going to be able to afford groceries, and eggs are being $1 million US American dollars. And so that is what we should focus on. And so she ought to run her race as I'm running mine.
Let me ask you something, and you kind of hit on the head here. You guys are going to run your race. I asked Rep. Driscoll about this. But, 2 things. One, she said, when I asked her to make that distinction, we need somebody who's going to be active and out there, not just when the cameras are on. So that's the first part, right? And then I'm hearing you talk about all these criticisms of interest. And I know it's about the constituents. It's about results for people. Yeah. And I know it's bigger than individual candidates, right? But also, as a person who just exists in the world and talks about politics, what is it like to be going at each other like this? Because in a lot of ways, you guys probably align on a lot of things. And does it matter to you if you guys still have a relationship after this?
Well, we didn't really have a relationship before, so I don't think we'll have.
Ray likes to ask the personal question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think politicians are people too, so I'm always really curious.
He's real. We didn't have a relationship before. I don't think we'll have one after. When you've called me ghetto and all these kinds of things, like all of these like elitist, classist barbs, I think black people need to have a wider conversation about that. I think for me, one, I think it's rich that, it's about cameras being on, like, Ray, the body of work I've done when no one was looking. And so I think every accusation is a confirmation. And for me, being in this world, the people of District 16 deserve better. And I've said this publicly. If Diane Hart was going to be my opponent, I would have bowed out. The people of District 16 deserve better.
I want to say, before we have just a few minutes left with you, speaking kind of about relationships, but it's about elections here. So we've got your pal, Angie Nixon, of course, is running for Senate against Alex Vidman. I saw you guys, of course, the other night at the Allendale Church. There has been a lot of vitriol between the camps, not so much between the candidates, between the campaigns of these two candidates. And, of course, it really broke loose last weekend when Rachel Vidman kind of went out there, and people can read about on my story. I wrote that a couple days ago if you don't know what I'm talking about. But the point is this, though, is that I've seen some anger from some Angie Nixon supporters, and I know you're an Angie Nixon supporter, who are so mad at Alex Vidman. They say they may not vote for him in November if, in fact, he wins on August 18th. Are you concerned about that? Because obviously Democrats are an underdog in all these big statewide races in November.
So what I'm concerned most about is the treatment of black voters and the black electorate. And I think what we're seeing with Angie Nixon and Alex Vidman in this particular race is that once again in real time, black voters and the black electorate, they want our labor but not our leadership. And so my concern is that the Democratic Party in the state of Florida, well, I mean nationally, but specifically in the state of Florida, has a problem with black voters. So if you want to fix your problem with black voters, you ought to respect the voter. And so to me, that is the issue that is most concerning. I can't tell people how to vote, what they need to do. I think that, I know what I'm going to do. And I plan on voting for Angie Nixon in the general. So that's my plan. But I think that there's a bigger overarching issue.
Wait, I'm sorry. General, you said. So you're going to write her name if she's not. I mean, we have the primary.
I plan on voting for Angie Nixon in the general.
Not for Alex Vidman.
I plan on voting for Angela Nixon, who is one of my dearest friends in life, in the general. Okay. And what I am saying is that, one, I believe she's going to win. Number two, I believe she's going to win. And number three, there is a problem that has to be reckoned with within the Democratic Party with the black voters and black electorate. I am tired of us being the last folks, especially black women, the last people y'all come to and to dig you out of a problem. No, but you want our labor, but don't trust our leadership. And when we tell you that there's a problem and you say, oh, yeah, we're not going to do that. And when the problem that we tell you manifests, then you want to come to us. Absolutely not. And so I think that that's where we have to be, where we need to focus on.
Any last question, Ray?
No,
Ray, you don't have any burning questions for me, Fred?
No. I don't want to ask you a bunch of personal questions.
I love the personal questions.
No.
I love them because people are real and people need to know, don't let these degrees fool you. Don't let all this, I am a human. I come from a working class family. I am still working class regardless of me being a lawyer. People need to know there are actual real people that are representing them in government. So I appreciate the real questions, Ray.
All right. Well,
thanks for coming on again.
We will leave it there. That is the voice of Representative Michele Rayner, representing right now House District 62, but she's running in the State Senate District 16 race, which of course is open to Republicans, Democrats, and independent voters alike if you're in that district.
Early voting is happening right now in Hillsborough. Starts tomorrow in Pinellas, and my mailbox is full of mailers from both of you, Pinterest. Look at this one with Ron DeSantis.
Look at the back, yeah. And so, Mitch, it was an article. I promise you, it was an article that was done.
Oh, that is great. We're looking at a mailer right now that has Ron DeSantis under a bed sheet, and it says, you don't have to guess what's keeping Ron DeSantis up at night. Oh, my God, that's so funny.
And I want to say I appreciate my postal workers, and I'm glad we got some USPS connection coming in next.
Period.
All right, so Michele, thank you so much for joining us on The Skinny here. Best of luck on the election. Okay, we are now going to pivot down to something that I think our listeners are going to be very interested in, and that is talking more about the Democratic Socialists of America movement here. And as I said at the top of the show, we had this election. Now, technically, and we'll get into this, that the Abdul Al-Sayed is not a member of DSA, but he is a progressive, and the left is winning these primary elections, and there's a real, maybe almost a freak out about what that's going to be in this November election. So joining us right now in studio, we're really happy to have these guys here. We've got Raja Ezra Butterfield, a longtime Tampa DSA member, an experienced labor organizer, and we have Cliff Connolly. Cliff is a member of Orlando DSA, came all the way from driving through I-4 to come with us today. He's also on the DSA National Political Committee, which is the DSA's highly elected decision-making body. So, guys, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. Thanks.
So, Cliff, let's begin with you because you were in Chicago last weekend, right? The DSA had their big national convention. This must have been a lot of fun. I mean, because, DSA has never been in the news like it has been, I don't know, ever. I know DSA has been around since, I guess, the 60s, right? Michael Harrington created the group, but it's gone through some permutations. But let me just begin this. So right now, I believe DSA's got 120,000 members nationally, which is more than double than when it was when Donald Trump won a second second term as president in 2024, so just 2 years, less than 2 years. A CNN poll released 2 weeks ago found that 1/3 of Democrats and Democratic-leaning adults identify as Democratic Socialists. But there's worries. Obviously, the Democratic Party establishment thinks that this is going to doom them in November. In fact, a Washington Post Ipsos survey conducted last month, 3 out of 4 Democrats said they would be open to supporting a Democratic Socialist for president, but fewer than half of all Americans felt that way. So anyway, having said all that, welcome. So what was some of the things that came out of Chicago that you can tell us about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a little bit of a misconception. We have our convention every 2 years. So we had one in 25 and we'll have another in 27. That's where we sort of chart out our strategy for the next couple of years, what the kind of things we're going to be working on. What we had over the weekend was our summit, which was actually our first time doing this. So instead of a big, debate hall where we're thinking about, what are our next steps, it was really more of a time to come together and have a lot of skills training. So like you said, the organization has exploded in growth, and we want to make sure that all these new people coming in have those really core foundational organizer skills of being able to have a one-on-one with your coworker to organize a union, being able to knock doors and talk to people about our candidates and about democratic socialism, how to have a brake light clinic to help people fix their cars so they're not getting pulled over by the cops and potentially killed or deported by ICE. Those are the skills that we want to make sure every DSA member has. So that was really sort of the core of what this weekend was about, was making sure everybody's on the same page in terms of our tactics and our strategy. And actually, we were able to set aside some time to have a really wide-ranging conversation about what our approach is going to be to the 2028 presidential primary. So that's going to be a huge moment for us as well. It was a wonderful time. We had about 800 people. We had our youth section called YDSA. They actually had their convention downstairs from us.
How young is that cohort? Does it go?
It's mostly college kids, but there are actually some high school chapters, which is just really cool to see. I was not that cool in high school, so it's awesome to see that that's an option for people now.
So, Roger, how long have you been a member of DSA?
I think I joined 2018. I went to a meeting in 2017 and just moved to a different area, and so I think I'm coming up on exactly 8 years.
And I know you guys probably don't feel like this, but for so long, DSA has been on the fringes, as Mitch was kind of alluding to. People look at our publication and be like, why are you writing about this stuff? And now everybody's like obsessed with it. How has it been for you on the inside? Because it seems so basic and boring on one end, hey, we fix brake lights, we do this is how you organize. What's it been like to see people really curious and then come to the meetings and come to the party? People perhaps you never thought would be sitting there.
Yeah, totally. It's been wonderful to see all the new energy coming in. I think especially in Florida, what we're seeing is just everyone understands that the Democratic Party are losers. That's what they do, is lose elections in the state of Florida. And people are ready for a bold political vision that actually offers an alternative, that's just willing to say, yeah, our economy is fundamentally unaffordable and fixing it would be unconstitutional, so we need a new constitution. Just having that bold vision to actually say out loud what's in the back of everyone's heads, that if the Supreme Court can just veto the will of the people, we don't live in a democracy. People are ready for that kind of vision, particularly in Florida, where everyone feels so left behind by a Democratic Party that has just abandoned the field. DSA is very, very popular here, and I think we're going to start to see some real big upsets for the establishment, especially with Oliver Larkin down in Broward County unseating Jared Moskowitz, who's Trump's #1 Democrat, and other races as well as just all the on-the-ground work that we do.
That is the voice of Cliff Connolly. He's a member of Orlando DSA. We're also have Roger Ezra Butterfield, longtime Tampa DSA member. Okay, guys, let's get real here, though. Okay, there's opposition building here inside the Democratic Party. I just read this morning there's a centrist Democratic group called Third Way. Their president, Jonathan Cowan, told the New York Times that his group will spend $15 million between now and the 2028 election to discredit democratic socialism. He said the effort would include opposition research into DSA, polling, social media programs, and educating Democratic activists and leaders. It would target both Democratic socialists and those such as Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, whom he derided as performing the, quote, DSA dodge, flirting with Democratic socialists enough to get their organizing manpower and support while remaining distant enough to avoid the explicit label. And I will say this, there appears to be some Democrats who are trying to move away from DSA. There was a progressive Democrat, Michigan Democrat, who won the other night, Will Lawrence. He is the co-founder of the Sunrise Movement. He defeated 2 more moderates the other night, and he said on Wednesday that he allowed his DSA membership to lapse in the last month. Roger, to you on that. You've heard this, and you've also heard that some people they're Jamie Harrison's, your Democrat James Carville. is like, get your own party. Like if you guys are hijacking us, you're not with us on all these things, but then you want to run under our party label. So talk to us about, what's all going on with this right now, opposition amongst mainstream Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, historically, the Democratic Party has shifted a lot. I know Republicans like to point out that it started as a white supremacist party. It was the party of the South, of Dixie, of the Klan. And in the 30s, it transformed into a mass party for universal programs, the kind of thing that we are seeking to build, things like Social Security, Medicare. We want to expand it. We want Medicare for all. We want to ensure that retirement is not just a maybe this will happen, but a real guarantee for people. We want, expansion of the New Deal. And, honestly, to go way beyond it. But the thing is, the Democratic Party is up to the voters and to the people that actually make it up, not to strategists who, let's face it, have been out of touch for decades at this point. If they want to, de-align from us, like Chuck Schumer said, that, they want to get away from working class voters. For every one blue collar worker that we lose, we'll get 2 more in the suburbs. If they want to take that mentality, that's fine. But it's politics. We're going to contest that vision. We're going to go back to the working class roots. We're going to go back to the vision of universal programs and universal emancipation for working people.
And to this point, I'll say it is nice to see the Democratic Party establishment try for once. I do wish they would fight as hard against Republicans as they're trying to fight against us. But yeah, shoot your best shot. Like if you can actually get people on the ground knocking doors, I'll be surprised and impressed, but I think we do that better.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
I'm curious, as a movement grows, every party has its own inner squabbles and things like that and things they have to work out. What are the things that maybe from within DSA you seem to find friction on, and what is the conflict resolution process as far as going forward with policy and platform that you put out to the public?
Yeah, so DSA, I always say it's the one place in the United States of America where democracy happens, right? Our government is not a democracy. You have the Supreme Court, the president can veto everything, the Senate, et cetera. That's not a democracy. Our workplaces are not democracies. The boss doesn't ask you how you want to do your work, even though you know the work better, right? But DSA is a place where every single member has a say in the decisions that affect our lives and affect our work as members. So like I mentioned, we have our convention every 2 years where we make those national decisions. Our chapters, like our chapter here in Tampa, has monthly meetings where we decide on what we're going to do, and everybody has a vote. It's not just, you show up and get your orders from leadership. We're going to have a really in-depth debate about this and decide what we want to do next. And we have seen debates about, if you go back far enough, 10, 12 years ago, DSA was debating, do we even want to run in elections? That's obviously a settled debate now. We're doing that very well. But yeah, that's the process, is we sit down face to face in a meeting, talk it out. People will stack for, people will stack against. We take a vote, and then we abide by it, right? In Orlando, we just had an endorsement vote, and I voted no against endorsing this guy. I lost that vote. He's endorsed now, and next weekend I'm going to go canvass for him. We abide by the democracy of our chapter.
Let's talk about the platform, because that is controversial. Okay, so I'm going to read it off here slowly, but these are the things I went on the website. Demilitarize police departments, disempower police unions, and redirect funding to public services as steps towards fully abolishing the police and prison system, which protects, this is, I'm reading off it, protects the rich and jails the poor. Treat drug addiction and mental illness as health issues, not crime. And qualified immunity and empower civilian oversight bodies with real authority over the police. That's on criminal justice. On elections, replace the two-party system with a multi-party democracy. Expand the House of Representatives, implement proportional representation and ranked choice voting in all elections, and abolish the Senate. And what's the state end there? Okay. And some of those, I guess we can go through them one-on-one. I think the ones that are controversial, let's talk about the ones, because I think some of these are very interesting. I agree with actually expanding the use of House of Representatives. The idea that we do this redistricting, right, where we cram, we get more people in, but we still have to only have, why do we have to have only 435 members of Congress? I mean, because we did that how many years ago that was established, and yet we have such a bigger population now. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And then the question of the Senate, I've always said, as somebody from Florida or somebody from California, when you have the same amount of senators as somebody from Rhode Island does, there does seem to be something wrong there. So I think that makes, it's interesting to see the immediate freak out of some people on that. I do think those are really interesting ideas that take a long time to maybe actually change. But on things that are more hot button, that is the ultimately defund the police, if you will. and that is a killer for some politicians who, they said that a few years ago, are not saying that now. Let's talk about that for a minute, if we could. Roger, begin with you on the whole idea of what you think that we should have with our police, our law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that, look, a lot of this I actually think boils down to semantics, right? If we're talking about police abolition, right, the current police department setup is to be totally unaccountable from our communities. There is no relationship of like an organic community relationship to the police. It is not a Leave It to Beaver style sort of relationship with your local, constable or whatever. It is militarized police forces that are getting these arms that are taken from, Iraq and Afghanistan and other foreign ventures. The foreign policy, the empire comes home, and it comes to rule the republic and dominate it. And ultimately, if we want to have like a justice system, we have to actually ensure justice for everyone. It cannot be simply extreme punishment for the poor and lack of, just total immunity for the rich. The Epstein files is the most notorious case of this, but it goes back to things like the 2008 financial crisis, where not one Wall Street banker was jailed. I mean, I think there was like one guy who was like a lower level manager that got any sort of accountability. And that just shows you that the justice system is stacked against working people. So we want to refocus the justice system to be something that is universal in scope and actually delivers real justice, not simply locking people away. We are one of the highest imprisoned countries in the world. I believe the last time I checked, 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prison population. And that's just egregious. We have to scale that down. We have to take real steps toward having jobs, not jails.
Again, that's the voice of Roger Ezra Butterfield. He's a member of Tampa Democratic Socialists of America. We also have Cliff Connolly with the Orlando chapter, speaking about, also with DSA, I should say, also a member of the national group there. 11:47 right now. We're talking about that the rest of the show, and we'll be continuing to talk about this. It'll be so fascinating to see what happens in November. Cliff, now actually, you do have you mentioned Oliver Larkin is running in Congress against Jared Moskowitz in the Democratic primary down there in South Florida on August 18th. Angie Nixon became a DSA member just in the midst of her campaign for U.S. Senate. So you've got a U.S. Senate a DSA Senate candidate right now. We haven't had much polling in this race, which I find annoying, actually, to really know what's going on between her and Mr. Vidman. But what do you make of that? The fact, I guess, it's so popular now, right? So a progressive candidate wants to be known as a DSA member here in Florida.
Yeah. I mean, I completely share your concern that just the Democratic Party establishment doesn't seem to care about Florida enough to even have that kind of polling in place. But yeah, it's wonderful to see, a lot of people in the political sphere starting to move toward us. A lot of these candidates realizing, whereas, 10 years ago, we would have gone to them and said, like, hey, can we endorse you? And maybe they would have said, no, I don't. I'm a little scared to identify as a Democratic Socialist, even though I agree with everything that, you believe in. Now they're coming to us and saying, can we please call ourselves Democratic Socialists? Because they know it's going to help them get elected. And now we're in a position to be able to say, okay, well, how do you feel about the genocide that Israel's committing against Palestine? How do you feel about the fact that our president is a pedophile rapist? How do you feel about the fact that ICE is murdering people in broad daylight in the street on camera with no consequences? Are you actually going to talk about these things? Are you actually going to seek justice and try to hold people accountable? Are you not just going to pay lip service to the fact that the economy is fundamentally unlivable? Are you actually going to do something about it? Or are you going to back down when the Fox News hosts ask you about it? We want to see people like Oliver Larkin, who, when he got a question about, what do you think about all these illegal immigrants coming over and raping people, being able to turn around and say, well, number one, they commit less crimes, and number two, your president's a rapist. Why are we not talking about this? That's the kind of energy that we want to see from our candidates.
That is the voice of Cliff Connolly from the
like, in case there's any confusion.
Yeah, absolutely here. But you mentioned the G word when talking about Gaza and Israel, and I think that is also something that is really associated with DSA right now. The very intense, toxic discussion about Israel, which is dividing the Democratic Party. In fact, we saw Michael Van Sickle wrote in the Tampa Bay Times, Hillsborough Democrats are having an event tomorrow night here, and they canceled, I believe, somebody who was a member of the DNC who was going to speak because he is maybe Mitch had comments along those lines here in Tampa. That is like they don't want to even have it here. Do you concern? And I'm going to throw in the name Hassan Piker, which maybe some of our listeners know about, maybe some people don't. And I know some people say this is ridiculous. The Republicans have. I saw Jennifer Welch say, they have Ted Cruz, they have all these people, and the Democrats get blamed or whatever for Hassan Piker. But anyway, this Hassan Piker is a big deal apparently in the left-wing streaming movement, and he's made controversial remarks about America and Israel, and that some people, I think it's shorthand. The mainstream hit on DSA is they're tying in with like anti-Semitism and the like. How do you guys fight that? And it's a very. We almost don't want to open it up because I don't want to just dominate the conversation, but it just seems to be part when people talk about DSA, they associate things like Hassan Piker and with anti-Semitism.
Here's what I think. We had a pandemic where the government completely abandoned us. I watched a genocide live streamed on my cell phone. I watched children riddled with bullets. My rent goes up every single year and my wages always stay the same. Those are the things I care about. I don't care what, respectfully, Hassan's like the Gen Z version of a radio guy, right? Like he's not elected to anything. Right. That doesn't concern me. What concerns me is, can we have a livable economy? Can we have a democratic government? And can we stop having all of our tax money going to murdering children instead of funding our lives?
I think you answered my question that I'm about to ask in your previous response, but I'm curious because have consultants started to reach out to you guys? And what is their reaction when they get in that room? Because they're obviously seeing what's happening here and they're like, oh, there's something that I don't understand. Can I tap into that? Has that been happening? And what is it like when they get in the room with your organization and kind of hear the full breadth of it and what it entails? Like, have consultants lopped onto this? Do you trust them? Would you work with them? Things like that.
Yeah. I think that the purpose of a system is what it does, right? And I think the purpose of the Democratic Party is to lose elections because they get a lot more fundraising when they lose elections. They get a lot more donations when Trump's the president than when he's not, right? And what these consultants do is give bad advice so that you have to come back to them the next year. That's what that industry is.
Well, by the way, it's interesting because Chuck Schumer, right, who you would consider an establishment as it gets. And I think at the end of the day, though, these Democrats want to win in November. Let's talk about right now, this election in November, right? They're desperate to take control of the United States House, which seems like a very viable. U.S. Senate, a little tougher, to put a check on Donald Trump for the next 2 years. I know you're talking about then later on who might be it'll be very interesting about 2028 and who might come out of that. So I've seen, Schumer kind of rally around Abdul El-Sayed, right? Yesterday, he's not choosing to, he obviously supported the other candidate, Haley Stevens. So it does seem, and if this Wisconsin candidate wins on Tuesday, I mean, the establishment's going to support these people because they want to win in November. You say they want to, sometimes, they're comfortable with losing or whatever. It works. And I know we've heard that in Florida over the years because we've seen how this party has really, struggled, as it were. But what do you think? I mean, you're going to get it if Angie Nixon, say, is the nominee. The Democratic Party is going to get behind her.
I would hope so.
Well, yeah, you're questioning that.
I would question that.
Okay,
because, the Florida Democratic Party, let's be honest, needs to get its stuff together because at the moment it has been performing, I'd say, one of the worst state Democratic parties in the nation. And I've looked at data on this. It's not just anecdotal.
Yeah.
I also just think the political will is not there right now, at least for this state Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. But honestly, we saw it with Zoran's race. Like when Zoran won, he won the primary, and he was going up against the establishment. Andrew Cuomo running as an independent. Schumer never endorsed him, or if he did, maybe it was the last day. I forget.
Right.
But the point is that
Jeffries did not. I don't believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Jeffries didn't. That's right.
Right.
And we don't need their help. Is
right.
The thing. We win elections with or without them. We might actually do better without them.
But this is going to be a test, though, right? Because it's, again, and that's why I do think that was huge for the progressive movement / DSA with the election in Michigan this week, because that was a statewide race. As we know, there's a lot of money up against the candidate El-Sayed. But again, and you're hearing it, and I don't believe this, by the way, and I don't trust. We're going to do a segment next week about polling because I'm so down on it. I'm so frustrated by it. That was kind of the story that came out immediately after Tuesday night because, Al Said was going to win by a good margin. He didn't, but he still won. And I think, he's viable because you've seen these polls that show the Republican nominee in that race, Mike Rogers, would have, again, on polls, would have seemingly done better against Al Said versus Stevens. But, throw the as they say, throw the rule book out there. It's gonna play out. But do you think it's very significant? Because I don't know if there's any other DSA, and again, he's not officially DSA, but he seems to be aligned DSA, this Michigan race, because again, you can really prove your critics wrong, certainly, if he does win that race in November, that this can go beyond the base, beyond Democrats versus Democrat, which is what you had in New York City for the most part, even in the summer, right? So, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for everybody like that who's sort of riding in the wake of DSA without actually committing to DSA, I wish them well. I wish them the best. Obviously, we're aligned on a lot of things. The only candidates that I'm working for to get elected, right, are DSA-endorsed candidates.
Okay.
And those are the people that you're seeing win elections comfortably 99% of the time. If you look at the difference between Maylot Quiros in Denver and the other candidate who used to be DSA and then distanced themselves from DSA and then lost their election, right? That's the DSA difference is we win.
I want to bring on a caller right here. This is going to be our friend Simon because he's always provocative, and I want to see him throw something in the mix. Simon, we've got like a short time here. Good afternoon. Good morning.
Okay, I'll try bulletproof this. First of all, this is a distinction between democratic socialists and social democracies, which are Scandinavian countries. And I don't think these gentlemen know the distinction. Also, if you're looking at national health care, I'll give you an example. Bernie Sanders, VA administration. Now, let's get back to the black vote, to the forensics of Michigan. The black vote was not there for the
right.
Al-Said.
Right.
Take
The other thing is...
Okay, that's what. Thanks, Simon. We have time. Thank you, Simon. So, okay, I don't know where you can pick up any of those things he talked about. But the black vote, okay, I'll just pick that up for a minute. There's a perception that DSA is kind of like the classic Democratic, even the voters of 2024, which is more white, more educated, and that's not hitting the working class voters, and that you're even seeing that with the DSA type of mold, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I didn't go to college. I'm an EMT. That's what I do during the day. There's plenty of people just like me in DSA, blue-collar people that are not educated. There's people that have graduate degrees and, everybody in between. So DSA is a place for everybody. It's not just a place for one type of person.
Yeah, and I just want to say that, the caller can make that distinction if they want democratic socialism, social democracy. A lot of people have different ideas about this. But personally, when I think of the idea of democratic socialism, I go back to my childhood hero and now my adult hero, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was a labor martyr. He was somebody that fought for economic justice throughout his whole career, not just at the end of his life. He fought against the empire. And his vision was democratic socialism. He said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, but there must be a better redistribution of wealth for all of God's children. And I'll say that, Dr. King was a labor movement participant, and, my democratic socialism is deeply rooted in my workplace organizing and my own workplace at the post office. I work in pretty much one of the most diverse employers in the United States. Historically has hired, I believe, twice the proportion rate of African Americans, and is a diverse workforce, a diverse union, and we fight for outcomes that benefit everyone, and that's what my democratic socialism is rooted in.
With the last couple of minutes we have here, it was interesting to hear the caller. Richie Floyd has been a city councilman for forever, just quietly doing his work. He is a democratic socialist. I'm curious, what is next for DSA locally here in Tampa Bay? Are there candidates that are coming out? What are the elections going to look like? What's it look like next for this organization locally?
Yeah, so just want to mention that Cliff's already talked about Oliver Larkin. We love him. He is running in South Florida, and he's a nationally endorsed candidate. We have a locally endorsed candidate, and it's a little confusing, but
Ashley Herman?
Ashley Herman, exactly.
And that's the state district 69.
69.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, in Hillsborough County. Yeah.
Exactly, in the Valrico, Brandon, Wamama area.
Right.
And
Danny Alvarez is the incumbent. Yeah.
Yeah, she was endorsed by Tampa DSA. To get a national endorsement requires a bit of a longer process and some other characteristics, but she is not locally endorsed, and we will be canvassing for her starting tomorrow at 10 a.m. in, I think it's Providence West Park in Riverview.
And if you've listened to this and you're DSA curious, Tampa DSA does have what we call a Socialism 101. So we'll go over what DSA does, what we're about, how you can get involved. That's going to be Saturday, August 22nd, 4 p.m. at the Brandon Regional Library.
The voices of Cliff Connolly, Orlando DSA, and part of the National DSA, Roger Ezra Butterfield from the Tampa DSA. On the top half of the show, Representative Michele Rayner running against Rep. Driscoll there in the state Senate race. On behalf of myself, Skip Sassy on the board, Anthony Madur on the phones for us today, Mitch Perry from the Florida Phoenix. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, one last show next week before the election, so we'll do.
That's right.
Concentrate. Not sure what we'll do, but
we will do WMNF Tampa things, and we'll keep going hardcore in here. Thank you so much for giving us this space, supporting this station, keeping the lights on here. Please keep doing it. I see Elove in Studio One ready to give you some art in your ear. Have a good weekend. Wear a rain jacket again. Is it ever going to stop raining?
hey, we need it to rain. Dude.
That's what I was waiting for. Somebody to chime in and be like, oh boy, we needed it though. Have a good one.